Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. It's been a week since the Ahsoka series finished, and so now I feel like I can finally give you guys a review and tell you what I think about the show. Probably gonna go through this one episode at a time. I do have to say, no matter what I think about Ahsoka, it really should not affect you and what you think about Ahsoka. I mean, whether you like it or not, I think it's good to trust your gut instincts on this. This is probably the one thing you should always go with your instincts on, and that is when you're interpreting whether you like a film or not. The whole reviewing thing, it's very subjective. Everyone has their own expectations and, what they like and what they don't. All right, let's move forward. For those of you who want the quick answer from a pure enjoyment and technical standpoint, as in entertainment factor, writing, acting, directing, and visuals and set design, I put Ahsoka above Boba Fett and Kenobi, but beneath The Mandalorian and Andor. There were some episodes that absolutely blew me away, and other episodes that were kind of underwhelming. I would have to say this is very expected for me from Dave Filoni. I think he has a consistency issue. Having said that, I do think that a lot of the larger world details and lore details that Ahsoka introduces have a huge impact on the future of the Star Wars franchise, which I think is really cool. Because it really does raise the stakes in a way I just feel like these other shows couldn't. As much as I love the Andor series, the deep characters, the very strong themes, we all knew where the story was going to head. It's more of a reminder of why we fight rather than hinting on what new dangers might await us. The Mandalorian was just straight up entertainment, especially the first two seasons. The third season was a bit more political and heavy in the way Andor tried to be. I think it worked partially only. But yeah, The Mandalorian definitely has that mass appeal going for it. It's just so much fun, and Baby Go-Gurt is really the perfect mascot for a show like this. But Ahsoka really taps into, I think, what Star Wars does best, and that is create this sense of mystery and awe for the audience. The journey to another galaxy, the introduction of the world of Peridea, was what kept this show really interesting for me. You've probably seen at least a few of the videos that I've done about this part of the lore. It's clearly something that's got me really hooked. Star Wars is a franchise that is constantly trying to convince you that the fate of the galaxy is at stake, and when it's done in the right way, it can truly be a rewarding experience as a viewer. Before we continue though, a quick word from our sponsor for today's video, saber.com. They have a Halloween special right now. Anyone who buys a replica saber gets a free Jedi or Sith Robe of their choice. Just add both items to the cart and the price will be updated for free. This offer ends on October 22nd, but if you want your robe to arrive before Halloween, we recommend you order it by October 18th. saber.com has a wide range of some seriously awesome looking and hard to find lightsabers. For instance, they have the Chimera, which is Ezra Bridger's blade. I like to call it the staple gun. They also have Kanan Jarrus' blade. You might recognize that circular hilt guard as the one Professor Huyang gives to Ezra. So guys, if you want to get your hands on one of these babies, check out our description down below for more information. Also, if you use the promo code EWALK, that's all caps, you'll get an additional $15 off of your purchase. Thank you for your patience. On to the rest of the video. Ahsoka, for the first time in a long time, had me really excited about what was going to happen with the Star Wars storyline. I also realized that my interest is heavily reliant on the fact that I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I've watched all of the prerequisite stuff from the Clone Wars to the Rebels series and all the little cartoons and novels in between. I kind of wonder how the experience for casual fans is when they see Ahsoka. If you don't know all of the background information, do all the fundamentals in this show actually hold up well? Like, what prevents the Ahsoka series from just being another mediocre streaming TV show? Whenever I watch a Dave Filoni show, I know I'm watching a Dave Filoni show because he pays a lot of homage to previous parts of Star Wars. He has a lot of callbacks to his own content, which, I love as a fan. It's great to see your investment in previous content be rewarded, but at the same time, there's a part of me that thinks this is a cheap, dirty trick. He's just wowing us by referring to things he's done in the past. Is this actually good? Instead of relying on solid fundamentals, isn't he just trying to lean in on our nostalgia? Well, actually, that's not completely fair. I think Dave Filoni has improved a lot since he started doing live action with The Mandalorian. But if you take a look at, the 2 episodes he directed in Ahsoka, think about it. Which 2 episodes did you think he directed? It's 1 and 5. And these are both episodes that heavily rely on recapping older content. And there are also some slight issues with the direction, especially in the first episode. I really don't like the first scene with Ahsoka exploring the ruins. This is really nitpicky, but Rosario Dawson moves way too slow. Her movements are way too big for what the scene is, I guess. The removal of the hood, the looking up, and the slow dolly to her face is nice. we kind of see her face for the first time in the scene, but then she proceeds to move like this a few more times in the tomb. It's just distracting. I feel like this happens a lot with new cinematographers and editors. They get really sucked into how awesome a scene looks, and they kind of don't realize that it doesn't work well in a sequence. The pacing's just way too slow, and it doesn't look right. I mean, all she's doing is trying to figure out a puzzle, and this just takes way too long. And I wouldn't pin this on Rosario. I feel like she's been pretty good in a lot of her performances, but it's more of a Dave Filoni thing here. In a lot of ways, this dramatic motion is over the top, and it's the kind of stuff you would see in animation, and it really does not translate well into live action. I do have to say, transitioning from animation to live action is not easy, and Filoni's been doing a really good job of this. I feel like from a pacing standpoint, this is really the only part of the 2 episodes he directed that really bothered me. Everything else was pretty good. It was well paced. There is, however, some pretty bad lines also in the first episode that I didn't like, especially between Sabine and the pilots, the New Republic pilots. It's just so wooden.
Well, you're missing the ceremony.
Oh, that was today.
Thought you'd want to be there. It's a big day for you, hero.
Yep. Well, you're not wrong.
All right, look, Commander, I have my orders. I'm gonna need you to pull over.
Well, here's a new order. Get lost.
These lines of dialogue remind me of what like background actors say in superhero movies.
I didn't sign up for this!
There's like really just 3 ways you can make this work, and the first one is the best way, just don't include them. I mean, it's meaningless dialogue almost. The second way would be to have a very charismatic actor say what are pretty cliche lines. Sometimes you can just charisma your way through anything, like that's what Harrison Ford was always known for. And then the third way is just to put an interesting twist on it, and they didn't really do either of these options. Also, the way the sound is mixed here is really jarring. It just clips back and forth from background speeder noise to background inside E-Wing cockpit noise. And so my first impression of Ahsoka was average. I thought to myself, oh, this is going to be more classic Dave Filoni. Some okay content mixed in with a few really deep and emotional and well done episodes. So the first episode was a bit rough for me, and then the second episode was a little better. It's actually directed not by Filoni, but by Steph Green. She's the second director who steps in. We get to see more of Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati and Morgan Elsbeth in this episode. I really gotta say, the one very positive thing with all Disney Star Wars is they get the sets and tone down really well. This grayish purple vibe on Cetos was very well done. I like how they always give us muted colors for Baylan and Shin Hati. Lothal also looked amazing in live action. You can really tell that the city has recovered a lot since the Imperial occupation. I also really enjoyed the little Corellia side sequence and the chase. Seeing Chopper being that old maniac again scores nostalgia points. But I think it's also fair to say that even new audiences enjoyed him, especially when you can make out what he's saying. The ending of the second episode is almost a direct remake of the end sequence from Rebels, which itself pays homage to Ray McCoy's concept art that Filoni based a lot of Rebels on. So other than just doing callbacks all the time, Filoni also loves paying homage to previous creators. There's a part of me that thinks that maybe it's just because he's a film nerd and he truly respects all of these creators, or perhaps he just doesn't have enough ideas of his own, and so he has to lean heavily on other people's content. As you can see, I have this like love-hate relationship on how I view Filoni. Well, not hate. I don't hate Filoni. I think I respect him for what he can do. Obviously, you know, I'm not in charge of The Mandalorian or any of these TV shows I imagine to be a handful. I'd never be able to do it, so I have to respect him from that perspective. And I really do admire the hard work he seems to put in all of his content. I think that really does show a lot. And so I guess when it's talent that's lacking and not effort, I can't be as angry towards an individual. And I think, again, Filoni continues to learn and develop himself. Now, the third episode is also from Steph Green as the director. Congo, my editor, actually didn't like this episode, and he said he admitted the real reason was there wasn't enough footage for his footage library. He really likes cutting things up, so for him, getting new cool scenes gives him more opportunities to make these videos. He does really put a lot of effort into these cuts, which I always appreciate. Congo also mentioned that this was a really short episode, which I do agree with, but I don't really like commenting about the pacing when it's dealing with episode lengths. And that's because I feel like non-serialized TV shows on these streaming platforms are a newish thing. They're really not TV shows. They're more like a 3 to 4 hour long movie that just is broken up in weekly segments. I actually don't think this is the proper way to watch these shows. I know Andor had a huge problem with this. They had these like 3 show arcs, and the the middle episode of each arc was a little bit disjointed and slow, especially if you didn't see the one previous video, and like the pacing was always bad, and people were always like, I don't like the middle episode, and you know, that's clearly because of how they released it. So episode 3 is short, but I feel like if you watch the entire series in one sitting, it'll fit a lot better. It's also like the perfect homage to A New Hope. Instead of Luke training with Obi-Wan with the remotes, it's Sabine getting trained by Ahsoka.
With the blast shield down, I can't even see. How am I supposed to fight?
I can't see. How am I supposed to fight?
I love how Dave Filoni introduced all of these Japanese elements, like these holograms of tatami mats used by Professor Hu Yang. Swordsmith, back in the day, used to test their katanas on these kind of rolled up mats to see just how sharp they were. And then you have this short action sequence where Ahsoka's Jedi shuttle must evade several enemy fighters. Sabine heads into the turret like so many other Star Wars heroes have before her. Also really enjoyed the political scenes with Harrison Dula and Senator Jono. I think I like this primarily because I've read so much about the factionalism that would emerge in the New Republic and ultimately lead it to its doom. And so the reason why I like this, again, is just because I'm a super nerdy Star Wars fan who really likes the political aspects of it. But the dialogue and the political theater is kind of on the light side. This isn't like House of Cards. So, you know, I guess they have to find a middle ground here, which makes sense.
Were you ever in the war, Senator?
No.
Just sat back and waited to see who came out on top?
But the dialogue does a good job of getting the point across, what the tension and conflict is here. And it sets up this important dynamic between the rebel veterans of the war and the new political elite. Now, episode 4 of Ahsoka was just wow. I said it before, and I'll say it again. And this might be because of the director, Peter Ramsey. He was a part of the team that brought us into the Spider-Verse. It's probably one of my favorite Spider-Man movies in recent times, and, you know, most Spider-Man films are pretty good, so it tops all those. The acting direction in episode 4 gets a lot better. I mean, Natasha Liu Bordizzo's acting goes from being wooden and a bit forced to much more believable and fluid, especially in this scene with Balin's skull where she gives up the map. I think it was just really well done. When you see such a wide range of performance quality in a young actress like Natasha in the same show, it's usually because of the direction. And, you know, George Lucas was famously bad for directing actors and directing dialogue. Everyone in the prequels suffered except for maybe Ewan McGregor. I mean, Natalie Portman's career was almost derailed by the prequels, but she clearly had the acting chops to win an Oscar for Best Actress later on. And Hayden Christensen's career was destroyed by the prequels.
I'm haunted by the kiss that you should never have given me. My heart is beating, hoping that that kiss will not become a scar.
Okay, that's the kind of stuff you fantasize about saying to your crush in middle school before you've ever touched a real woman. Which I guess actually applies here because, you know, Jedi chastity belts and all. But those are lines of dialogue that should have never been written. And, you know, I'm guessing Lucas didn't really run this by our writing team or something, because I don't know how they let this actually become a thing for the script. It's just terrible dialogue. It makes me feel so uncomfortable. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still love the prequels. That is my trilogy. I've watched it so many times, but that's probably why I have a more critical view about it as well. Anyway, my point is, with proper direction, like in episode 5, thanks to surprisingly Dave Filoni, Hayden Christensen sounds a lot better. Like, he looks like he can actually act here.
There's hope for you yet.
And it's really nice seeing him get a chance to like revisit this character and do it properly, or just do it better. Although you can't feel too bad for him. I think he made like $12 million for the prequels, and he made $1 million for just showing up in a few scenes in Ahsoka. It's a good deal. Let's go back to episode 4 though, because I really did like this episode a lot. I think this was really the episode where we got to see a bit more of Baylan Skoll, who quickly became the most interesting character for me. He's a mercenary now. He clearly has some dark side tendencies, but he also clings on to his vulnerabilities and his past as a Jedi, which is really just a realistic reaction to everything he's gone through, I feel.
It is an unfortunate evil, but speaks to a greater truth. One must destroy in order to create.
Some people will be triggered by his worldview, but it's really understandable why he thinks the way he does. He's a very realistic and honest character. And the way he mentally tries to break down Ahsoka before fighting her by bringing up Anakin and her past is just brilliant.
Everyone in the Order knew Anakin Skywalker. Few would live to see what he became. Surely that must leave a mark. Is that why you walked away? Abandoned him?
This is where Dave Filoni's deep understanding of the lore and the characters really just pays off. And this duel, the giant knight versus the samurai, the efficient and minimal movements by Baylan Skoll on the defense combined with the passionate and almost unbalanced moves of Ahsoka work really well here. I almost like this more than the Kenobi-Vader duel from the Kenobi series because it does feel more grounded. That might be because there's no expectations here for this duel or this matchup. And finally, Ahsoka waking up in the world between worlds was just like mind-blowing. Not because it's objectively cool, but because it's another callback. I just recognize this stuff from the Rebels and I enjoyed it, right? So episode 4 was really peak Ahsoka for me. Let's move on to episode 5. This is where we get to see young Ahsoka and Anakin. Ariana Greenblatt really nails the performance here. She captures the youthful determination of Ahsoka so well. It was really cool seeing the Clone Wars as well in live action. Honestly, above all, it was just nice seeing Hayden Christensen be Anakin. He was a really big figure in my life growing up, you know, watching him in the movies and the cartoons. So it was awesome seeing him again come back. It's a nostalgia trap, guys. Now Anakin has an important message for Ahsoka here, and that is to essentially wake up because she's drowning, and more importantly, she needs to wake up and I guess take her situation, her challenges that she faces a bit more seriously. In all honesty, this is kind of a meh message. I was hoping for something a bit deeper, perhaps something about letting go of her fear that Sabine will turn to the dark side if she teaches her, or maybe a lesson about how love and just being supportive of your Padawan will get them through most things, including any kind of dark side tendencies they might have. Anyway, I just don't understand why an entire episode was dedicated to just Anakin telling Ahsoka to wake up. It felt like a mid-season break for a show that just wasn't long enough to begin with. I know a lot of fans are gonna love this scene, but again, if you don't know about that previous connection between Anakin and Ahsoka, how good is this scene? Now, when we reach Peridia, I feel like they got the atmosphere and setting down really well. The planet felt desolate and ancient and at the same time alive with some kind of dreadful energy. I really love the Purgle graveyard idea. This is the flip side of Filoni doing all these callbacks. It is truly impressive to see him, you know, plant the seeds for some kind of story element like almost a decade ago and then revisit it later on and for it to work so well. The key is to balance the old fans' appreciation and love for these moments and also not confusing new fans too much. The whale bone graveyard is a great example of something that works for both fandoms. It's just objectively really cool to see. And also seeing Thrawn in live action was fun. So was watching Lars Mikkelsen slowly taste each word coming out of his mouth. I think it was a great casting choice.
What was first just a dream has become a frightening reality for those who may oppose us.
But again, it's Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati who kind of steal the show here. I really enjoy watching these two.
I know no such stories.
You weren't raised at the temple. Stories of this galaxy are considered folk tales. Some ancient past, long forgotten.
The playfulness and how she delivers that line, the way Baylan kind of smiles towards her, it kills me a little bit because you can see the innocence and the naivete of Shin and kind of a softer side of Baylan being this nurturing master. One can't help but wonder what these two would be like if the world had dealt them a better hand. I think Filoni really plays with this concept a lot and it works so well. Even villains get to dream about better days, right? The world building with the Night Troopers and the Night Sisters magic is pretty cool. I think the appearance of Stormtroopers, something we know, with the red ribbons and metal plating, something we don't know, is a cool design choice that also has functional implications that fans like me were fascinated with. I do have to say, we start seeing a little bit of Filoni's background as an animator pop out here. Like in animation, when you design different faction and different groups, you try to simplify how they look and give them all like a similar color or a style of armor so it's easier for children to pick out, oh, that's that faction, that's that faction. And so these red bandits are kind of uniformly designed in that way so that the audience is clear about what they are. I think when you see this in live action though, it's too standardized and it looks a bit out of place. It makes sense for stormtroopers, but for bandits living out and, you know, scrapping and scavenging for things, it's a little jarring to see all of them painted the same color. Again, this is nitpicking, but just these are some small things I noticed. How Filoni writes Thrawn in episode 6 and 7 and how he deploys the strategy of misleading Ahsoka and her crew when she arrives on the planet was well done. It's very Thrawn-like. This is a commander who uses his brains and interprets how his enemies are going to act by doing things like researching them.
It would seem Ahsoka Tano is alive and well after all.
Here is everything the Inquisitorial database had on her.
Her master was General Anakin Skywalker.
Yes.
For hardcore fans, there's that extra layer of information that you probably wouldn't know unless you're a hardcore fan, and that is that Thrawn and Anakin actually served together during the Clone Wars, and he was really impressed by what he saw from that Jedi. Now, it's really the last episode of the season that kind of bothers me a bit more. I felt like the reveal of the zombie-like night troopers was a bit underwhelming, along with most of the action sequences here. Like, I understand this is a build-up season, and really what we're looking at is just how the finale ends more than what happens during it, but again, it was a little underwhelming. It felt a little bit lower budget and not really that impactful. Like, important moments like when Sabine's force potential finally is revealed were just executed in a very normal, meh fashion. The scenes that I do really like are just Thrawn arriving on Dathomir, Bail and Skull looking at the peaks in the distance, and that's because it promises to expand Star Wars in a bigger and more interesting way. So overall, I would give Ahsoka a 6.5 out of 10 if you're not a fan. If you are a fan, I give it something closer to like a 7.5 or 8. Again, consistency is a problem with Filoni, and I think he's getting better and better. Like, this show really only had a few weak episodes, and even then, the episodes weren't completely trash. There were also good moments in each one of the episodes, but yeah, again, consistency, and I feel like they need to definitely increase the budget for some of the choreography and planning the action sequences. You know, Disney, just spend more money. The foundation has been set though for a very interesting series. I think that the casting for most of these characters was done very well, as was the character development. Although it is a true shame what happened to Ray Stevenson, rest in peace. Hopefully they'll be able to continue his character somehow by either replacing him or I don't know. I hope they just replace him because that character needs to go on. I really hope that Disney also does a second season here and continues the story. When you end off with that many cliffhangers, it's just not okay to just cancel the show, I think. If this series has taught me anything, it's that Dave Filoni should probably be in charge of the Star Wars story, lore, and world building. He seems to excel at this. Also, he's not bad at character development as well. But for all the more technical stuff, I do think they should hire better directors so that you do have better consistency throughout the episodes. The writing also does need some work from time to time as well. I think there are definitely some slow parts and scenes that just weren't written well. Anyway, guys, that is my breakdown of the Ahsoka series. Let me know in the comment section below what you think. I look forward to reading all of your comments, and be respectful to each other, guys. It's okay to have different opinions. Opinions don't hurt people, right? We can all have different ones. Anyway, guys, as usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. I'll see you next time.